I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Sarah for 5 years. We were the classic couple who seemed to have it all figured out: great jobs, a beautiful house, and a promising future. We shared mutual friends, weekend hikes, and cozy nights in. But slowly I began to notice changes in Sarah. At first, they were subtle. She seemed a bit more distracted, her laughter less genuine. I shrugged it off, attributing it to work stress or maybe just the monotony of married life. But looking back, those early signs were glaring. She started staying late at work more often, claiming she was swamped with projects. The late-night phone calls became more frequent, and I often caught her texting under the table when we were having dinner. I'd ask her about it, and she'd snap back, "Just work stuff, Jake. Can't a girl have a little privacy?" The defensiveness was new. It sent a chill down my spine, but I wanted to believe her. I didn't want to think she could be cheating. It came to a head one Friday evening. I had planned a nice dinner to surprise her, but when I walked into the kitchen, the smell of burnt pasta hit me. Sarah was on the couch, phone in hand, clearly lost in whatever was on her screen. "Hey, I thought we'd have a nice dinner together," I said, trying to keep my tone light. She barely glanced up, mumbling something about being too tired to cook. That's when I noticed the glimmer of a message notification. It was from a guy named Mark. I didn't think much of it at first. She had male friends, and it wasn't unusual for her to chat with them. But when she saw me looking, her whole demeanor changed. She quickly shut the phone and shot me a look that screamed panic. That night, I did something I had never considered before. I went through her phone while she was in the shower. I felt guilty doing it, but my gut was screaming at me. I found messages between her and Mark that went way beyond friendship: flirtatious banter, plans to meet up, and even details about their sexual escapades. My heart sank and I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal. When she came out, I confronted her. "Sarah, what the hell is this?" I held up the phone, my hands shaking. Her face went pale, and for a moment I thought she might faint. "Jake, I can explain, it's not what you think," she stammered, but I wasn't having it. I was furious, and all the hurt I had been trying to push down came rushing out. She tried to play it off as a friendship gone wrong, claiming Mark was just someone she could talk to. But her frantic, shifty eyes told me she was lying. I won't lie, the confrontation was one of the most painful moments of my life. I felt betrayed, angry, and lost. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into a dark abyss. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, had shattered my trust completely. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was right there in front of me. My emotional journey spiraled from that moment. I went from rage to heartbreak to a deep sense of loneliness I had never felt before. I had trusted her implicitly, and now I was left with nothing but confusion and pain. I needed answers, but the more I confronted her, the more excuses she provided, each one more ridiculous than the last. "I was just looking for attention," she said at one point, as if that made it any better. In my mind, I started building a plan, not just for how to address this mess, but for how to reclaim my dignity. I couldn't let her manipulate me into feeling sorry for her. I needed to decide how to move forward. The question loomed large: stay and fight for a love that felt like it was already dead, or walk away from the wreckage of our marriage. I knew I had to make a choice, but I wasn't sure what that would be just yet. As the days dragged on, I began to piece together my feelings. The betrayal was raw, and every time I saw her, it felt like I was looking at a stranger. I realized I had to take control of my life again. This situation was not going to define me, no matter how much it hurt. I started thinking about my options and what would ultimately bring me peace. Would I be able to forgive her, or was this the end of the road for us? The answers were coming, but I needed more time to think it through. I didn't want to rush anything, but I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. The wheels were turning in my head, and I felt the stirrings of a plan forming. But that was just the beginning. The road ahead was going to be rocky, and I wasn't sure where it would lead. After the confrontation, life with Sarah became a twisted game of cat and mouse. I was still reeling from the emotional blow, and she seemed to sense the shift in our dynamic. I remember the first week after I found out about her affair. It felt surreal, like I was walking through a fog. I went to work, put on a brave face and pretended everything was fine, but inside I was crumbling. Sarah tried to act normal, but her attempts felt forced. She would smile at me, trying to recreate that spark we once had, but it only made me feel more nauseous. I could see her, sitting there with her perfect hair and makeup, trying to charm me back into her world. It was sickening. I felt like I was in a messed-up version of a romantic comedy where the love interest had just committed the ultimate betrayal. I wanted to shout at her, to confront her at every turn. Instead, I found myself becoming quieter, more reserved. She was doing everything to keep me from thinking about what had happened. She'd suggest we go out for dinner, or watch a movie, or even go for a hike. I'd smile, nod, and go along with it, but in my mind I was plotting. I needed to regain control. A part of me wanted to lash out, to make her feel the pain she caused me, but another part was more calculated. I had to think strategically. One evening we ended up at a local bar for dinner. As we sat there, I studied her. She was laughing, trying to engage me in conversation about the latest TV show we both liked. The laughter felt hollow, like a mask she wore to hide the guilt. I couldn't help but notice the way her eyes flickered to her phone every few minutes. I was certain she was waiting for a text from Mark. My stomach churned. I decided that the best way to move forward would be to gather information. I needed proof of everything. I wanted to catch her in the act if it came to that. I wanted her to know she wasn't pulling the wool over my eyes anymore. So I started following her. It felt wrong, but I was desperate to find a way to end this farce and confront her one last time. The first time I trailed her, I felt like a detective in a bad movie. I watched from a distance as she met up with friends, laughing and drinking. I felt an odd mix of anger and sadness, like I was witnessing a completely different person. But what struck me most was how she acted so carefree, as if she had no idea that I was suffering at home. I spent the following weeks piecing together her schedule. I learned when she had work dinners, and when she'd claim she was out with friends. The more I observed, the more I confirmed my worst fears. There were nights she wouldn't come home until the early morning hours, claiming traffic or last-minute meetings. It was infuriating, but I held onto my composure. One Saturday night, I decided to take my investigation a step further. I borrowed a friend's car and parked it down the street from a restaurant where she had said she was meeting a coworker. I didn't know if Mark would be there, but I felt like I needed to capture the moment. I sat in the car, heart racing, as I watched people come and go. The restaurant was bustling, and I tried to distract myself by scrolling through my phone. Then I saw her. Sarah walked in, and my heart dropped. She looked stunning with that little black dress that always made her sparkle. But it was the way she held herself, so confident, so carefree, that set off alarm bells in my head. I watched as she hugged a man I didn't recognize, and it was then that I knew Mark was there. The minutes dragged on as I sat in my car, waiting. I felt like I was in a time loop as I watched them laugh and chat through the window. They leaned in close, sharing secrets and stolen glances. My blood boiled. Was this what my marriage had come to, watching my wife flirt with another man right in front of me? Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped out of the car, focusing on steadying my breathing. I had to confront her. This was my moment, and I needed to be direct. I approached the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. As I pushed the door open, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The restaurant was loud, and I scanned the room for her and Mark. There they were, at a corner table, heads bent close together. I approached them, and as I drew closer, I could catch snippets of their conversation. Sarah's laughter rang in my ears, but it suddenly turned into static noise as I felt an overwhelming wave of anger wash over me. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady, but my insides were churning. Her head snapped up, surprise flooding her features. Mark looked between us, clearly confused. "We need to talk." The look on her face was one of disbelief. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she asked, attempting to regain her composure. "Didn't you say you were working late?" I shot back. "Is this your idea of a business meeting?" The tension in the air was palpable, and I could see the color drain from her face. Mark looked visibly uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. I had her right where I wanted her, and I was determined to make her face the reality of her choices. As the confrontation unfolded, I realized that this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey, but I was ready to see it through, no matter how much it hurt. I needed her to know that I wasn't going to be the silent partner in this twisted mess any longer. I was reclaiming my life, even if it meant tearing apart the foundation of what we had built together. And maybe, just maybe, I would find some clarity amidst the chaos. The atmosphere in the restaurant was heavy with tension as I stood there, heart pounding, ready to confront Sarah. Her eyes darted from me to Mark, who was still sitting there, his confusion palpable. "Jake, please," she pleaded, her voice low but frantic. "Can we talk about this somewhere else?" I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "No, we're talking right here. You owe me that much. You've been lying to my face for months." I could see the guilt wash over her, but I wasn't going to let her play the victim. My anger was bubbling over and I could feel the stares of other patrons on us, but I didn't care. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly wanting to disappear. Maybe I should go," he said, attempting to stand. "Sit down," I ordered, my eyes narrowing. "This involves you too, buddy." I turned my focus back to Sarah, who was now practically squirming in her chair. "You've been meeting him behind my back and I want to know what's going on. How long has this been happening?" "Jake, it's not what you think. Mark is just a friend." "Save it, Sarah," I snapped, cutting her off. "I've seen the texts. I know exactly what's been going on. You need to stop lying." Her face shifted from panic to defiance. "Okay, maybe I've been a little flirtatious, but it's not a big deal. You've been so distant lately. I needed someone to talk to." The audacity of her words hit me like a slap in the face. "Distant? How about you explain how you've been coming home at all hours of the night, going on dates with him? I trusted you, Sarah. I thought we had something real." The restaurant felt like it was closing in on me, the noise of laughter and clinking glasses dissolving into white noise. I could feel my heart racing, a mixture of betrayal and a burning desire for clarity. "Tell me, did you ever think about what this would do to us?" She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. All the bravado she had before faded, leaving only a shell of the woman I once knew. I took a steadying breath, feeling both anger and sadness battling within me. "I believed in you and us, but you've shattered that trust. I don't know if I can ever forgive you." Mark cleared his throat, trying to ease the tension. "Maybe it's best if I leave," he said again, but I wasn't ready to let him off the hook just yet. "No, you're not going anywhere. You're part of this too." I turned my gaze back to Sarah, my voice low but firm. "How long has this been going on? Don't try to downplay it. I deserve to know the truth." She hesitated for a moment and I could see the gears turning in her mind. Finally she sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. "A few months, Jake, but it was just supposed to be fun. I wasn't going to leave you, I swear." A mix of emotions crashed over me: anger, confusion, betrayal, but most of all I felt a profound sadness. The woman I loved had turned our marriage into a game, and I was just the unfortunate player who had yet to realize the rules had changed. "Fun?" I echoed incredulously. "Is that what you call this? A few months of deceit and betrayal? You think that's fun?" "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she stammered, her defenses crumbling. "I was unhappy, Jake. I felt neglected, and Mark was there for me when you were." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You could have come to me. You could have told me you were feeling neglected, but instead, you went outside the marriage. You chose to cheat." The thought of her with someone else physically hurt, and I could feel the ache in my chest tightening. Mark's face was flushed, and I could see the guilt written all over him. "Look, man, I didn't know you two were having issues. I thought she was single," he said, trying to defend himself. "Shut up." I snapped at him, my attention still focused on Sarah. "You don't get to play the innocent here. You both made choices, and now I'm left to pick up the pieces." The weight of the moment hung heavy as Sarah looked down at the table, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry," she muttered, but I could hear the emptiness in her words. "Sorry doesn't cut it," I replied, my voice cold and steely. "You need to understand the gravity of what you've done. You've betrayed not just me, but everything we built together. You need to think long and hard about what you want." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see realization washing over her, but it was too little, too late. I had already made up my mind. I couldn't go back to pretending. Everything was okay. "I need time to think, Sarah," I finally said, my tone softer but laced with sadness. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. You've destroyed the foundation of our marriage, and I don't know if I want to rebuild it." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I felt a flicker of pity, but that pity dissolved as anger rose within me. "I'll be at the apartment," I added, standing up and turning to leave. "When you're ready to talk about what this means for us, you know where to find me." I walked out of that restaurant feeling like I was in a daze. The emotional whirlwind had taken its toll, and I felt exhausted. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I had to make choices that prioritized my well-being. As I drove home, I couldn't shake the image of Sarah sitting there, tears in her eyes, but I also felt a growing sense of determination. I wouldn't let this define me. I was going to take back my power, and whatever came next, I was ready to face it. It was time to rebuild, but I had to decide if that included her in my life or not. The days that followed felt like an emotional fog, each passing moment blending into the next. I stayed at the apartment, and Sarah was still at the house. We exchanged a few texts, but they were awkward and filled with tension. There was no real communication. It felt surreal to be living under the same roof as the person who had shattered my trust, but I was determined to keep my distance. After that confrontation, I needed to clear my head, so I threw myself into work. I focused on projects, spent extra hours at the office, and avoided social situations where I might run into mutual friends. I didn't want to answer their questions or explain my situation. I wanted to process everything on my own terms, without outside interference. But being alone with my thoughts was a double-edged sword. I found myself replaying every moment of our marriage, scrutinizing the signs I had ignored. How did I miss the late-night texts, the long hours at work? I felt like a fool for trusting her so completely. I thought back to the happy moments we shared, remembering how she used to laugh at my jokes and be my biggest supporter. But now those memories felt tainted. It was hard to separate the woman I loved from the one who betrayed me. One evening, while I was rifling through our old photo albums, I stumbled upon a picture of us at a beach resort from our honeymoon. I remembered how carefree we were back then. I could still feel the warmth of the sun and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. That image felt like a cruel joke now, a reminder of the happiness that had been so easily discarded. I decided I needed to take action before I became completely consumed by this pain. So I reached out to a therapist. I knew I needed guidance to navigate this emotional turmoil. I scheduled an appointment and shared my story, pouring out my feelings of betrayal, hurt, and confusion. Talking to someone who was objective helped. I realized that while Sarah's actions were unacceptable, I needed to focus on my healing first. I couldn't control what she did, but I could control my response. The therapist encouraged me to explore my feelings fully, to understand my worth, and to set boundaries. After a few sessions, I started to feel a sense of clarity emerging from the chaos. I began to recognize my own strength. I was determined not to allow Sarah's betrayal to define me. I needed to take back my narrative, whether that meant working on our marriage or choosing to walk away. One day, I decided it was time to talk to Sarah again. I called her and suggested we meet at a nearby park to talk things through. We hadn't had a real conversation since that awful night at the restaurant, and I felt it was essential to lay everything on the table. She agreed, and we arranged to meet the following afternoon. As I drove to the park, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I didn't know what to expect. Would she try to manipulate me again? Would she come clean about her feelings? I arrived early, finding a quiet bench under a large oak tree. The sun was shining, but the warmth did little to ease my nerves. When Sarah arrived, her expression was a mixture of apprehension and hope. She looked different, more vulnerable. Perhaps she wore a simple sundress, a far cry from her usual polished self. We exchanged awkward hellos, and I gestured for her to sit down. "Thanks for coming," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "I think we need to talk about what's next." "I know," she replied, her voice shaky. "I've been doing a lot of thinking too." I took a deep breath, preparing myself for whatever might come next. "I want to hear you out, but I need you to be honest with me this time. No excuses, no lies, just tell me how you really feel." She nodded slowly, her eyes darting away. "I've been so lost, Jake. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you until everything exploded. I didn't think about the consequences of my actions. I thought I could have a little fun without it affecting our marriage. I was wrong." Her admission hung in the air, and I felt a flicker of something. Was it hope? Or was it just the reminder of the pain she had caused? You need to understand that trust is everything in a relationship. Right now, I feel like I don't know who you are anymore. I need to know if you want to work on this or if you're still just looking for validation outside our marriage. "I want to work on it," she said earnestly. "But I understand if you don't want to. I can't blame you. I've been selfish. I thought the grass was greener and I was wrong." I studied her expression, searching for sincerity. "How can I trust that you won't do this again? You've already broken my trust once." "I know," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I've been seeing a therapist as well. I want to understand what drove me to do this. I want to change, Jake. I want to be better for you, for us." Hearing her say that sent a wave of mixed emotions crashing over me. Part of me wanted to believe her, to give her another chance, but another part screamed that I should protect myself from further pain. "I appreciate that you're willing to work on yourself, but I need time to figure out if I can forgive you. Trust doesn't come back overnight. Take all the time you need." She replied softly, her voice breaking. "I'll do whatever it takes to show you I'm serious about this. I want to fight for our marriage." As we sat there, the weight of the conversation loomed large. A part of me wanted to reach out and hold her, to comfort her the way I used to, but the betrayal was still fresh and I knew I had to keep my guard up. "I'll think about it," I finally said, standing up. "But for now, I need space. I need to focus on myself and what I want moving forward. We can talk again soon." She nodded, understanding the finality in my tone. As I walked away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. The conversation had opened a door, but I didn't know if I was ready to walk through it yet. The journey ahead was still unclear, but I knew one thing. I was taking control of my life, and I was ready to face whatever came next, whether that meant rebuilding my marriage or finding a new path altogether. It was time to prioritize me, to figure out what I truly wanted without the influence of Sarah's choices clouding my judgment. In the weeks that followed my conversation with Sarah, I found myself on a precarious tightrope. I was trying to balance my emotions while navigating the aftermath of her betrayal. I focused on my therapy sessions and delved deeper into understanding my feelings. But every time I saw Sarah, the memories flooded back. Her laughter, her warmth, the way we used to connect. Yet, those memories were now tainted with distrust and heartbreak. I took time to reflect on everything we had been through. I realized that while I was deeply hurt by her infidelity, this was also a pivotal moment for me. I had spent too much of my life defining my happiness by the relationship, and now I needed to reclaim my identity. I started picking up old hobbies I had abandoned: running, reading, even cooking. I found solace in these activities, a way to reconnect with myself. At work, my colleagues noticed a shift in my demeanor. I was more engaged, more focused. I even received praise from my boss for a project that had been on the back burner. It felt good to be recognized for my efforts, a reminder that my worth wasn't solely tied to my marriage. I joined a local running club, and the camaraderie helped fill the void that Sarah's absence had created. Despite these positive changes, every interaction with her felt heavy. When Sarah reached out, she was often apologetic, expressing her desire to mend things between us. I could see she was genuinely trying to change, and part of me was tempted to let down my guard and give her another chance. But the scars were too fresh, and I wasn't ready to dive into that uncertainty just yet. One evening, Sarah invited me over for dinner. I hesitated, conflicted about whether I should go. After much thought, I decided it was important to have an open conversation. I needed to assess whether there was still a spark worth igniting or if we were simply going through the motions. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt charged but awkward. Sarah had set the table with candles and flowers, an attempt to recreate the romance we once had. It felt strange sitting down in our home. The place that had once felt so safe now felt like a minefield. We exchanged small talk, but the tension was palpable. As we ate, I couldn't help but notice her nervousness. She kept fidgeting with her napkin, glancing at me as if waiting for a signal from me to open up. I decided it was time to address the elephant in the room. Sarah, I appreciate the effort you're making, but I need to know if you're ready to be completely honest moving forward. What do you mean? She asked, her voice quivering slightly. I mean, we can't rebuild trust if we keep dancing around the issue. You need to be honest about everything, how you're feeling, what you want from us, and what drove you to cheat in the first place. I know, she replied, her eyes welling up with tears. It's something I've been working through in therapy. I was feeling so lonely, Jake. I thought I could find validation elsewhere, but it was a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you. I felt a pang of sympathy wash over me. Here was Sarah, laying bare her vulnerability. I wanted to believe her, but the scars of betrayal were still too raw. I appreciate your honesty, but I need more than words. I need action, Sarah. I need to see you taking responsibility for what you did. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, she said, her voice steadying. I'll show you I can be the partner you deserve. I want us to work through this. I love you, Jake. Hearing her say those words again sent a rush of conflicting emotions through me. I had once loved her deeply. How could I just dismiss it all? But I also couldn't ignore the betrayal that shattered the foundation of our relationship. Love isn't enough right now, Sarah. We need to rebuild, but we also need to establish boundaries. I can't be the only one fighting for this. I understand, she replied, wiping away a tear. I want to fight for us, and I promise to do better. I'll be patient, however long it takes. Surprisingly, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe we could rebuild something out of this wreckage, but I wasn't naive. It was going to take hard work from both of us. I also had to protect my heart from further pain. Let's take it one step at a time, I said cautiously. I'm willing to explore this, but I need to see consistent efforts from you. Of course, I'll prove to you that I can change, she said earnestly. As we finished dinner and moved to the couch, we started to talk about our shared memories, reminiscing about the good times amidst the hurt. It felt cathartic, as if we were stripping away the layers of pain and starting to rebuild a connection. But the reality still loomed heavy in my mind. While I was willing to give us another shot, I had to be vigilant. I had to protect my heart and ensure I wasn't stepping back into a trap of repeated betrayal. That night, as I left her house, I felt a cautious optimism. It was a step in the right direction, but I knew the journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges. I was ready to confront them, but only if Sarah was truly committed to changing. Only time would tell if we could rebuild the trust that had been so recklessly destroyed. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope, a possibility that we could forge a new path together. However, I remained aware that this was just the beginning, and I had to stay grounded in my own healing process, no matter the outcome. The weeks that followed that dinner felt like an emotional roller coaster. Sarah and I settled into a new routine of open communication, which was refreshing yet challenging. We scheduled weekly check-ins to discuss our feelings and the progress we were making. I was surprised by how much I appreciated these conversations. They felt like a lifeline, a way to reconnect and build a new foundation for our relationship. However, I also remained cautious. While Sarah was making an effort, I was still grappling with the shadows of her betrayal. I needed to see consistent changes, not just in her words but in her actions. I watched closely as she made strides to be more present and engaged. She started attending therapy regularly and shared insights with me about her sessions, which helped me feel included in her journey. One evening, I came home after a long day at work to find her cooking dinner. The delicious aroma filled the air, and for a moment, I felt a familiar sense of warmth. When I walked into the kitchen, Sarah turned and smiled, her eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "Guess what? I made your favorite." As we sat down to eat, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of joy. We talked about our days, shared laughs, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. It wasn't the same as before, but it was a step toward something new. After dinner, we transitioned to the couch, where we settled into a comfortable silence, a stark contrast to the tension that had once filled our home. I looked at her, searching for clarity about whether I could fully trust her again. "You know, I appreciate everything you're trying to do. It's not easy for either of us," I said, breaking the silence. "I know," she replied, her expression serious. but I want you to know that I'm committed to this. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve." Her sincerity struck a chord within me, but the ghost of betrayal still lingered. "I want to believe that, Sarah, but I need time to process everything. Just because we're trying to move forward doesn't mean all the hurt disappears overnight." "I understand," she said, her voice softening. "I'll be patient. I just want you to know that I love you and I'm willing to fight for our relationship." As the weeks turned into months, I found myself oscillating between hope and doubt. There were both good days and challenging ones. Some moments brought laughter and warmth, while others reminded me of the pain. I learned to accept that healing was not a linear process. One pivotal moment came during a weekend getaway we planned, a chance to reconnect away from the routines that had felt so heavy. We went to a cabin in the woods, just the two of us. I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as we drove there. Was this a fresh start, or would the past rear its ugly head again? When we arrived, the beauty of the natural surroundings enveloped us. It felt like a fresh canvas. We hiked, cooked together, and spent evenings by the fire, sharing stories and memories. Gradually, I began to feel a sense of ease with her again. One night, as we sat by the fire, I looked at her and said, "I'm trying, Sarah. I'm trying to let go of the past, but it's hard. I still have moments where I feel the weight of what happened." "I get it," she replied, the sincerity in her voice resonating with me. "I can't change the past, but I want to show you that I'm committed to our future. I don't want to lose you." As her words sank in, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. Maybe we could rebuild something beautiful from the ashes of our past. I knew it would take time, but I was willing to put in the effort. I wanted to believe that we could emerge stronger on the other side. Over the next few weeks, our relationship continued to evolve. We were learning to communicate better, and I began to feel a sense of healing. We were both making sacrifices and adjustments, and slowly, the foundation of trust was being rebuilt. I started to see glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, the one who made me laugh and dreamed about the future with me. And while the shadows of betrayal still lingered, I felt more equipped to handle them. The journey was far from finished, but I was hopeful. As I reflected on this experience, I realized that relationships are not just about the good times. They are also about how we navigate the storms. I learned valuable lessons about trust, communication, and the importance of personal growth. I wanted to share this story as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is a flicker of hope. It's okay to feel lost and hurt, but it's also essential to confront those feelings and decide how to move forward. No matter what challenges arise, we have the power to reclaim our narrative. In the end, I chose to embrace the uncertainty of our future, knowing that whatever path we walked together, I would be stronger for it. The journey of healing continued, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose and conviction. For better or worse, I was ready to face it all together or apart. Time would tell, but for now, I was committed to the process, and that was enough.